There's a strange moment that arrives in midlife, a moment when the work that you do becomes deeper, it becomes more textured and frankly more interesting, and yet the words that you use to describe it in some way somehow become smaller. You try to explain what you do and the language feels narrow, tapered, measured. You reach for those usual phrases from the pocketbook of your earlier career and somehow they no longer fit. It's what I call a quiet misalignment, but you can feel it every time someone asks you what it is that you do. This video is about that moment, why it happens and why it persists, and how, as mature professionals, we can reclaim a clearer, more natural way to speak about our work. Today, I want to take you somewhere that makes this much easier to see. Many years ago in Shanghai, I worked with people who were really highly accomplished, people with decades of achieved expertise, real expertise, and yet almost every one of them struggled to describe their work in a way that felt clear, that frankly, that felt honest. Now, at first, I assumed that this was something of a cultural issue, but it followed me everywhere I went. London, New York, Portugal, different cities, different cultures, different professions, but the same challenge. It took me really a long time to understand what was happening, because here's the thing. When you reach your 40s, your 50s or your 60s, your experience expands, but your language often stays exactly where it was. It's like you're trying to describe something much wider through a much narrower frame. And this is our real struggle. It's not that we can't express our value, it's that our value no longer fits the shape of our old vocabulary. Look, if you've spent years perhaps in the corporate environment, or really any environment where being measured, being contained, being professional was rewarded, you may have unconsciously trimmed your expression to fit expectations that really no longer apply. Now, there's another layer to this too, because mature professionals often try to be clear by compressing themselves. They use perhaps short, pithy sentences. They adopt quick labels. They put up oversimplified titles, anything that sounds efficient. But here's the thing. Clarity doesn't come from compression. Clarity grows when you expand the space so others can meet the real depth of what it is that you do. And that shift is what certainly changed everything for me after my own particular collapse. I stopped trying to sound precise. I began trying to sound real. And that is when people finally began to understand me. So let's get practical now. If you want to describe your work really clearly as a mature professional, then start with this single question. What actually changes for someone because of you? Not what you do, not your method, not your process, and not your fancy title. The actual change. Because change is surely where our meaning lives. And when you speak from meaning, instead of mechanics, well, clarity arrives almost by itself. Here's a simple way to begin that process. Write 3 before and 3 after lines about your work. 3 small, distinct shifts that you can create. When you do this honestly, without any pressure, well, then your expression begins to widen like this river, and you flow and you become far easier to understand. Now, this is exactly what I help people do in my 7-day clarity sequence. It's a calm but structured way to reclaim language that fits who you are now and helps others see the real shape of that value. If you'd like to explore that, you'll find the link in the description. And I'd like to thank you for watching and for giving yourself the space to rethink how you speak about your work, because it matters more than you or more than most people realize.